Very much, Madam Chair. It's been 18 years since this committee last had a hearing on tribal transportation needs. It is long overdue, so I want to thank you so much for holding the hearing, granting the request of Congresswoman Davids and I that we have a hearing focused on tribal infrastructure and transportation needs. It's important that we hear directly from tribal leaders on their needs and priorities for reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Bill. Transportation infrastructure is critical for our tribal communities, including the 22 tribal nations in my state of Arizona. A modern transportation network that fosters economic opportunity, helps tribal members reach their jobs, aids emergency personnel, connects vast distances between tribal communities, and transports children to and from school. The transportation infrastructure needs of our tribal nations are great. Many of the roads and bridges are a barrier to greater economic opportunities in our tribal communities because they need significant improvement or repair. This past summer, I had the opportunity to visit the Navajo Nation and see firsthand the significant transportation infrastructure challenges the nation is facing. The Navajo Nation has more than 11,200 miles of roads, over 27,000 square miles, making the nation first out of all BIA regions for road miles. The vast majority of these roads, 86%, are unpaved. Unpaved roads create numerous challenges, especially in adverse weather conditions for members of the Navajo Nation, whether getting to school or work or accessing critical services like healthcare. At current funding levels, the nation estimates it would take approximately 116 years and $7.9 billion to meet their current transportation infrastructure needs. Let me repeat that, 116 years. That's unacceptable to everyone here. Like the Navajo Nation, the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community is also experiencing significant infrastructure challenges. Years ago, the community was on the outer edges of Phoenix, but now it is bordered by our rapidly growing communities, impacting traffic throughout Salt River. Hundreds of thousands of vehicles travel through the Salt River community each day, placing great strain on the tribe's ability to maintain and keep these roads safe. The federal government has a trust responsibility to tribal nations, which includes providing the resources necessary to ensure the transportation needs in Native communities are addressed. Yet, despite this trust responsibility, Salt River receives only a tiny fraction of the federal funds it needs for maintenance and construction. While the FAST Act took important steps to help address the significant transportation needs and disparities in tribal communities across the country, more work must be done. We have an opportunity in the upcoming reauthorization bill to build on the progress in the FAST Act and make sure tribes do receive the resources needed to address these urgent needs. Madam Chair, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record letters from the Intertribal Association of Arizona, the Navajo Nation, Salt River Pima Indian Community, and the Gila River Indian Community into the record to discuss in more detail their individual needs.
So ordered.
These letters highlight the transportation infrastructure challenges and priorities of the tribes in Arizona for reauthorization. One of the recommendations I have heard from tribes in Arizona and others across the country is the need for an Office of Self-Governance at the Department of Transportation to oversee and implement the Tribal Transportation Self-Governance Program. Mr. Garcia, you addressed this earlier. I made the same question then for Ms. Clark. I wanted you an opportunity to address this issue. You mentioned the importance of establishing an Office of Self-Governance within the Department of Transportation. I couldn't agree more. In the proposed rule for Tribal Transportation Self-Governance Program, the department stated that it does not foreclose the possibility of establishing an Office of Self-Governance at the department at some point in the future. The department stated it also believes that a Tribal Self-Governance Advisory Committee may provide important information to the department as it implements the program. Ms. Clark, could you explain why establishing an Office of Self-Governance and a Tribal Advisory Committee are so important to the tribes for this new program?
Yes, it is important to the programs because it's establishing a new self-governance way of working with tribes directly with USDOT and tribes. And if half of those just all of a sudden when the June comes and wants to enter into a contract, then USDOT needs to be off and running. And right now it's not. And so that would be very helpful. And the advisory could help guide the self-governance.
Thank you. I'm out of time, but I will be submitting a question as it relates to funding challenges that our tribal nations face that may not be directly proportional to what states, city, and counties face as it relates to matching funds for federal programs, and I'd like to get an answer on the record for that. Thank you so very much. I yield back.